good afternoon, good evening to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Global Guys podcast. My name is Tom Phillips. I am a National Alliance Manager for Safeguard Global, and alongside me is
Mark Robbins, and I'm the VP of Sales for our Global Employment Outsourcing solution in EMEA. So just to give you a quick overview of the company that we work for a company called Safeguard Global, as we both mentioned. And we have two solutions, one being an employer of record solution where we can employ people on behalf of clients that don't have local entities. And then alongside that, we have our global managed payroll service, which is a global payroll solution for companies that have headcounts in countries with entities and are looking for streamlining of their data and potential integration with their standalone HR systems.
Perfect. So what are we trying to do? We're doing over the next couple of weeks a podcast with regards to and chatting to various industry leaders, should we say, industry connections that we have to talk about them, their company, what's happening right now with them, and what's happening in the future. We're going to have a bit of fun and games, and hopefully you'll join us throughout.
Great.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. Thank you for tuning in. This week we have Edward Frazer from the Trinity Group. Edward, thank you ever so much for joining us. Let's dive straight in and tell us about yourself and the company that you work for.
Okay, well, the Trinity Group is a financial services group here based in London, regulated by the FCA. And we are focused on raising money for world-class private equity firms, real estate firms, hedge funds. And we've worked with the likes of Carlyle. We get started with them. David Rubenstein is a good friend of mine. We've worked with KKR. We've worked with Senven. We've worked with all of the big name groups. We've got a number of groups started when they were spinning out or starting. So we've been really kind of pioneers in the private equity business relative to the fundraising aspect of it. So we've worked with all the good, the great, the bad, the good, the indifferent, you name it, but we've been there. We've been witness to history of this business.
Wow.
My own background is I am from the US. I grew up in Boston. I went to university in Boston. I came over here ostensibly to go to graduate school in the in the mid 70s. And the price of oil went from $1.10 a barrel to $40, $50 a barrel. So that in today's terms would be about $200 a barrel. So the race was on, and the Arab world was starting to buy up every place. And you could go up to Park Lane and there'd be queues getting into that little gas station right near the Dorchester Hotel, all the way up to and around, to the square up to past Oxford Street. It was crazy. Anyways, I went out. I lived. They set me up in Iran, and they said, Ed, here's your brief. We want you to put on distributors in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And the only communications tool I had in those days was telex. There was no social media. There was nothing. To make a phone call in those days, I would have to go into the post office, submit my name, and maybe within 3 to 4 weeks, I'd get a 10 to 15 minute slot to make a call. But, I was in my early 20s, and it was like, the candy store was just open. Here I was going to Japan and Taiwan, and I saw Muhammad Ali fight Joe Bugner in Kuala Lumpur. I was there. I met him. I met the great man himself.
Wow.
And, I was in Africa. I was in North Africa. But the core of the business was really in the Middle East. So living in Iran was pretty interesting. Love the Iranian people. The Shah was then in power. There were 3 Americans on the way to work one morning killed by the Mujahideen, which were not the Islamists, but really affiliated and associated with the communists. And I remember we had mimeographs in those days. So I would go around to people. I was a founding member of the Iran American Chamber of Commerce at age 23 or 24. Anyways, I would go out to you guys and say, look, you got to be careful the way you're going to work every day. We're targets. But anyways, I moved from there to Kuwait. And again, I loved it in Kuwait, loved the people there. And I used to go up to Baghdad frequently. I could drive up to Basra and then I'd be up, and we did a lot of business there. And did a lot of business in Saudi and the Gulf. So that became the big area. Although I really had my first excursion into Africa, which was amazing. Went to Egypt, and then I was down into Sudan, and then into Addis Ababa, and down into Kenya, down into the Comoro Islands, to Madagascar. I mean, it was quite intoxicating, shall I say. And business was good. And then they asked me to go to Egypt, so I moved to Egypt, and there again we had huge business right along into Libya, to Algeria, as the oil and gas industry was going. And I went back to London to work for my boss, a guy named Tony Sullivan, who was really probably one of the most instrumental people in my early career, directing me. He was really an amazing guy. And it was there that I realized that there was a lot of money resident in the Middle East, and I probably should make a pivot into the financial services business, which indeed I did. And I went to work for a firm out of New York called Bear Stearns, and I was based in Boston and New York, and we set up a group called Bear Stearns Global Investors, and that was to really focus on international, shall we say, alternative products. And that was, we were using a Dutch bank called Pearson, Helvey & Pearson, which was owned by ABN. ABN and AMRO had not merged at that point. And they hired me to come over to London to become a director of the bank and really to grow their business. And the first major client I had was a young guy named David Rubenstein, who had about 15 people in his firm. And he said, could you help us out? And I said, could we help you out? Yeah. Give me James Baker and the Lanesborough Hotel. And he did. And the rest is history. We just finished raising some money for one of his funds. But, it was a 7-year run that we became his primary fundraiser in certain parts of the world. But we realized that, the alternative asset business in those days, when I first started, everything was under the rubric of venture capital, and then over a period of time, it became alternative assets, and under alternative assets, we have, everything. We've got secondary funds, we got private credit, we've got all the rest. And my partner, Floyd, who, Tom, regretfully passed away, he became the U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia. And Ford had a very distinguished career. He was coming out of Harvard. He went to work for Chemical Bank, another one of these great banks that are no longer around. May they all rest in peace, like Bear Stearns. But he and I then, he joined me at Mace Pearson. Then he and I decided to set up the Trinity Group. And our first client was the Carlyle guys, because David said to me, well, look, I know you, you're my guy. And that became the foundation of the business as we've grown it. And, we continue to do that business to today. It's a very bespoke business. And the fact that we do two things, we raise money for, as I said, private equity funds, we do direct deals, we do a whole variety of fundraising for what we believe are really good, strong, groups. So that's a little bit of my background. That's a little bit about the Trinity.
Wow, that was a super impressive intro. I don't think we've had as interesting as that so far.
Well, you meet lots of interesting people on this journey.
Yeah, I can imagine you have. So moving, sort of carrying on from what you sort of finished at, what's your view on the industry at the moment with what's happening with COVID and stuff? Are you guys still finding people are raising funds, or are they a little bit hesitant, or how do you see the new normal?
Yeah, the new normal, it's very interesting you say that because Rubenstein was interviewed by the FT a couple of days ago. And, he sits on, this guy has now gone on to quite a career. I mean, but and I was watching it with great interest because he said, I don't think that anyone quite knows what's going to happen. We all have a view, we all have an idea of what's going to happen. But, the rebound and how it's going to come back, it's unclear. But I would say there'll be winners and there'll be losers for sure. And who are going to be the winners? The winners are going to be people who are nimble and quick and can adapt to the technology, who have the ability to have something a little bit unique that people will need, and therefore they're going to do well. As we saw, the retail businesses, those guys are going to really struggle. Commercial real estate, with what you and I, the three of us, are doing this morning, may put a big dent in that. What about all these malls? So I had a friend of mine, Mark Landau, approached me and he said, I've got an idea. He said, we should take a look at some of these outside malls and think about, repositioning, and he's got some incredibly good ideas to take those big assets and reposition them into very interesting, companies, products, destinations. And, because you're going to have to think really out of the box on this. And, and you hear different points of view, but my view is very specifically, we don't know quite what's going to happen, because if you did, you'd be running out and doing everything. And in the great financial crisis in 2008, people were buying real assets at distressed prices. Meaning real estate and the like. But, is that going to be the case today? I don't think so, because, remote, working is becoming very in vogue. And, how many people will want to pay out big, rents if they don't have to? They may keep an office, but it's not going to be the size of the offices and all of that. So, I mean, you have to start looking at clearly different markets. So, to your question, how are the investors responding? Well, all of them are saying, look, first and foremost, I have to look at my current portfolio. I know that I have to see, where have I get beaten up? Where is it bouncing back? Where have I got holes? And what am I going to do how's my core business? So a lot of these investors are entrepreneurs. So now they're looking for cash to sustain them in the downturn. And then, where should I invest? A lot of people are going to cash because you don't know how long this will last. But as the dust clears, we're going to start to see there are clearly going to be opportunities. There'll be good assets with distressed sellers. And I think that's going to be an area. And what are those distressed assets today? I'm not sure. But, I can be assured that, the tech guys are they're the beneficiaries of this. One of the founders of Zoom came into my office about 4 years ago. And, I thought, Mr. Pereira, his name was, and I gave me the business plan. I looked at it and I thought, geez, this looks good, connecting guys here and there. And then I thought, you get Skype, you get Skype Plus, you get, Microsoft and Oracle, and they're all working, Cisco, they're all working on things. So we didn't do anything with them. We didn't think so it's the old line, coulda, woulda, shoulda, But, these are the things that happen. And you just never know which one's going to be people will always say, what's the risk? So what you're always looking at, as you two guys well know, is what's the risk in anything you're doing? And you say, okay, these are the risks, and then how do we mitigate those risks? You're always looking for ways to mitigate the risk. And in this case, no one saw this coming. There was a few people, Bill Gates apparently, had mentioned it 4 or 5 years ago that there could be a pandemic. But no one really understood, the breadth of this. And, this is global. I talk to my clients in China, lockdown. I talk to my guys in the Middle East, lockdown. I talk to my guys in the US. All over the world, we're all in the same position all at once. There was a great politician in America named Marshall McLuhan, and he said, there'll come a time when the world will know everything at the same time. And, this is back in the 50s. And, and it was thinking about television and then computers and, Instagram and all of it. But he had the view that everybody would be able to connect on real time. And, this was way ahead of everybody thinking about it. But he was saying, look at, so this whole thing has happened. Now, will there be an opportunity? Absolutely. Will there be, people that will have to redefine how they do their business? Absolutely. And today, I'm not sure, other than I can tell you that what the three of us are doing right now will be part of that solution.
Yeah, very, very much so. That is, incredible. I hope you still keep in contact with him.
As a matter of fact, I did. I had a couple of pictures of him and I at a dinner and with the first Saudi astronaut. But it was at the La Gravoche at Park Street. But anyways, you all know that, look, at these are times that are really, very sad for a lot of people. I just lost a cousin who was like a sister to us, and so my story is my father came from Ireland to America, the true American story. Not a pot to piss in, 6 kids, very devoted to the church and to my mother, but really banged away on us on education. So, education. So we all got good degrees and, master's degrees, and we all went on to have our own careers. But it's the American story. And, and I ended up back here because of a woman, and so that's how life is sometimes. But it's been a wonderful ride, and the best is yet to come,
Exactly.
The great thing about, the world in which we live in today is that if you stay healthy, you stay current, you stay relevant, you can add value to situations. And that's what I believe that we all can do.
Yeah, definitely. And I that's a great, that's a great phrase to keep there, Ed. So just a final sort of couple of questions on the sort of more serious side of things. So with regards to your strategic plan going forward, obviously, as you said, with the, opportunities are going to come about and everything else, do you think that there will be a big shift for you as a company, as Trinity Group, or do you think that you're just gonna, let's just buy time, still keep in contact with your, with your investors and everything else, and see how things go? Or do you find that Trinity Group will have to change its strategy within the industry?
Well, I think everybody is going to have to adapt, and if you don't adapt, you die, because it's the courage to change.
Yeah. Because,
we've seen historically, where, great companies, most recently GE, 20 years ago under Jack Welch, it was insurmountable. It had the highest market capitalization in the United States, but, it had grown too big, too unwieldy, so I think that, one has to really be, have that courage to change and change your business, because what went before is not going to be what's going to work tomorrow. And that means that you're going to have to look and say, how is my business going to change? A lot of our business is predicated on travel, and compliance. And compliance is not going away. It's going to get tougher. It's going to get, and this is going to offer, what we're doing right now is going to offer a great opportunity to cybersecurity guys. Why cybersecurity? Because the three of us may look like we're really on this. But if I'm asking you to give me your bank details and I'm selling you, a building in Mayfair, and you know me, but you're saying, well, listen, I want you to come here and I want you to look in my eye and I want you to tell me, this, if there's a problem, I know where to go and find you. So I think that there's going to still be the need to, to get on a plane and go see people when there are big things going on. Then this is going to be critical for the due diligence. It's going to be critical on, follow-up. It's going to be critical on a whole series of other issues. We have DocuSign now. We've got lots of things that you can do online. However, unless you really know people at a certain level, in our business, and you're committing $1 million or $100 million or $500 million, you're going to want to see somebody and know somebody more than just over here, because they could tape us right now and dice and slice us and put us in front of someone that thinks it's really talking to us. And they'll say, well, look at, we saw you and you kind of responded. And the manipulation that can be done with a good algorithm on this is really, it's really something that people are going to have to be really aware of, And so therefore, I think, we're going to adjust our business at one side, less travel. But I think in the early stages, people going to see, you're asking people for significant amounts of money. They're going to want to see you in the first instance and feel, who are these guys, or can we trust them? So I think that's going to be part of the change. So, but I mean, to your point, yeah, we're going to have to adjust.
Yeah, definitely needed throughout.
Cool. Should we move on to some slightly less serious questions?
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll start with the first one then. So, what profession other than the one that you're in now would you like to attempt? So, if you decided not to do what you were doing when you decided to do it, what would you have liked to have attempted? We've had some.
I would have
interesting
been an
answers
actor.
in this.
I would have loved to have been an actor.
An actor.
Very emotive. I could have loved being on the stage.
Being on the stage in West End, or as in front of the screen?
Well, in front of both sides, the small box, big box, the stage. No. I think, in our business anyways, I always, we are all actors on a big stage, and how we present ourselves to our clients is how, we have to make sure that, we're doing everything and we're authentic, we're honest, and it's from the heart. And I think great actors are, they can do great things. And I've always enjoyed, most of us, we enjoy the movies. You see a good play, you see a good, a good movie, a good series, and today with, Netflix and, Prime, I mean, there's so much good material on there. So that would have been my alternative, song and dance man, like, Jimmy Cagney.
Never know. There's still time, Ed. Still time. Who would you mentioned someone earlier with regards to being influential in your career, but if you could pick just 3 people throughout, who's been the most influential within your career?
Well, my dad, for certain, and then I would say this fellow Tony Sullivan here. He was really very, very. Very instrumental in my career. And then there was a guy named, a fellow who really helped me out named Tom Slattery. So these are the 3 people who were pivotal in my life at different times. But, there are others who have been, I could say, equally had a dramatic effect on me. A guy named Bob McCarthy, who really helped me at a very difficult time in my life and really kind of got me back on the straight and narrow. And I mean, there have been really, I'd say, a dozen people who've touched my soul, who've really given me, good advice. And my dad, for instance, he didn't have a pot to piss in, when my mother had 8 pregnancies, 6 kids. And he had both he and my mother had unbelievable great faith. They believed in the American story. And, you know, when I used to watch him, you know, with his faith, he would, you know, he used to look at, you know, I remember he was built like you know, he really was a very strong guy. And he died at 96. And I said, Dad, I want to be just like you. And he'd go, no, 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 you're not going to be just like me. You're going to become a lawyer, or you're going to go to school. And that was, I mean, you know, he was always about education and, you know, and doing the right thing, treating people with great respect and dignity, no matter where they're from. And, you know, those are, you know, qualities that were given to me early on. And you know, I tried to pass that on to my kids and friends of mine when I can, you know, and to do what these people have done for me on the road, you know, because it's tough at times. It's all, both you guys know. And, you know, the time to help people out is when they need it, not when they're at the top. You know, it's that's not the time when people need you, you know. It's when they really are struggling. And I've had people that helped me doing that. You know, Bob was probably, you know, really incredibly instrumental. You know, my brother-in-law, Peter Donadio, you know, my brothers, I mean, so many people have been very instrumental in my life. And so to say it's just three would be, you know, wouldn't be appropriate because, you know, there's just been a lot of people. I mean, Rubenstein was one. I mean, you know, we get early on with him and you know, he's transformed the landscape, he and a few others of the private equity world. And he was a great, you know, we were great partners for a period of time. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. I think that's been the number one we've had from every single male guest we've had on the podcast so far. So it's definitely consistently helping everyone.
Yeah.
Seems to be the ideal role model.
Well, it's a great message because it's a true message because, you know, none of us, it's the we, it's not the I, you know, when you hear people talking about, I did this, I did that. And, you know, fundamentally it's the we, it's the people who work together as a team. That's who usually, you know, over time, those are the ones, and those also people who, you know, I mean, there are people who are incredibly ruthless, who have done well, but you wonder what their legacy is. You know, you want to have a legacy, you know, look at, you try to do the best you can. And if I made mistakes on the way, absolutely. And, you know, and would I wish I could correct them? Yes, I do. But, you know, you can't. But, you know, what you try to do is to do the next right thing. And that's really what I hope that you know, that you know, what you leave in this world is really, you know, my kids will be my legacy, not what kind of money or anything else I leave behind. It's you know, that they have a sense of giving back, you know, and I see it in my daughter. You know, she worked down in the Calais camps, and you know, she's done lots of stuff in the charity world. But you know, these are the things that you want people to do, and you want them to have a good life, and you know, and but you want them to give back.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. So moving on to a slightly more fun and hopefully the least serious question we've had so far, and hopefully, mate, it's the last one for you. So outside of your obviously your influential people, who is your favourite global guy? So this can be an actor, a sportsman. We've had presidents of America.
My favorite guy, the guy that you two probably never heard of. He's a sportsman, and he was an ice hockey player. And in my, you know, he's an incredible gentleman. His career was cut short when he was in his late 20s, but he came in. I met him when he was about 12. I was an ice hockey player, but I remember having my nephew at the university I was at, and Billy Riley, who went to Boston University. His uncle was the captain of the U.S. Olympic team, and he walks in with this young guy who was 17, but I had heard about him. The Boston Bruins, which is the hockey team in Boston, had signed him when he was 12 years old because he was that good. And his name was Bobby Orr. And I think Bobby Orr was the greatest hockey player that I have ever seen. Now imagine, you two guys, you know a lot about sports, but imagine a central defender playing for Arsenal or Chelsea, whatever, led the league in scoring 2 years in a row. This guy was a defenseman, and he led the league in scoring 2 years in a row. He would take the puck from behind the net, and he would go up like Giggs did in that Arsenal game. I'll never forget that. But that's what this guy would do. But he was such an incredible gentleman, and his commitment to charity and his commitment to the way he played the game. And you know, I always get in debates about people. And they say, well, it's Gretzky. So I said, and unless you saw this guy, and it was very difficult in those days because there wasn't all of the expansion teams. But his ability as a player, as a gentleman, just as a great guy. And so he is one guy that, you know, when I met him, I remember I was skating with my nephew, and he came in with Billy Riley, who was then the captain of the BU hockey team, one of our big rivals. And he introduced me to Orr, and he was just the nicest guy, and that's the way he played. But so for those of you who don't know Bobby Orr, I suggest you Google him.
Yeah.
Because
I'll be doing that straight after this.
But to think that, you know, this guy could lead the league in scoring 2 years in a row. I mean, he was just extraordinary, both with goals and assists.
Amazing.
But more importantly, he was just a wonderful guy. You know, he encapsulated everything that you would hope in a great sportsman, you know?
Yeah.
And although he was an outstanding singular player, for him it was about the team. And again, the we.
Yeah, definitely.
As opposed to the I.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Ed, well, as Mark said, yeah, me and him will definitely be Googling him after this today and having a look at that for sure. Well, Ed, thank you ever so much for your time today. We really appreciate you coming on board. It's been incredibly fascinating to speak to you and to find out about Trinity Group and more, and your plans for the future, and your history. And, you know, on a personal side of things, obviously I've known you for a couple of years, and it's been an absolute privilege every time that I've spoken to you. But this is.
Well, Mark, you know Tom, he's so charming, you know. I mean, in our office, when he was there, we used to see him. He just had an aura around him, you know. He was a magnet for certain types of people.
We're gonna have to edit that out, Ed, I think.